You're asleep. It's 6:47 a.m. Your alarm is set for 7, and somehow, without touching your phone, without any reason to, your eyes just open. You lie there in the dark, annoyed, staring at the ceiling, knowing you have 13 more minutes you could have had. This happens constantly. It happens to people who go to bed at wildly different times. It happens to people whose alarms are silent. It happens even when you change the time the night before. So what is actually going on in your skull that lets it count down to a number it was never told out loud? The answer is stranger than your body just knows. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll realize this isn't a quirky personal glitch. It's one of the oldest pieces of biological software still running inside you, and it predates clocks entirely. Let's start with the experiment that proved this wasn't just superstition. In 1999, a team led by sleep researcher Jan Born at the University of Lübeck in Germany ran a study that should be more famous than it is. They told one group of sleeping subjects they'd be woken at 9 a.m. They told another group they'd be woken at 6 a.m. Then, secretly, they woke everyone at 6 a.m., regardless of what they'd been told. The group expecting the early wake-up showed a measurable spike in adrenocorticotropic hormone, the hormone that triggers cortisol release, beginning roughly an hour before the actual wake time. The group expecting to sleep in showed no such spike. Their bodies weren't guessing. They were preparing, chemically, for a wake-up they'd only been told about, not one their body could sense from any external cue. This means your endocrine system can essentially set an internal alarm based on an expectation and start ramping up by stress hormones in advance, like a biological countdown timer that doesn't need a clock face. But here's the part that should actually bother you a little. That same hormone spike, the one Born measured in a lab in 1999, has a name and a history that goes back way before lab coats and cortisol assays. It's called the cortisol awakening response, and it's not actually about modern alarms at all. It's about something far older and far more dangerous than being late for work. Let's go back, way back. Before agriculture, before fire was reliable, before shelter meant a locked door instead of a thin layer of brush. For most of human history, dawn was not a peaceful transition into a new day. Dawn was statistically one of the most dangerous windows in the entire 24-hour cycle. Most predators that hunt humans and human ancestors, big cats especially, are most active in the low light just before and during sunrise. Visibility is poor enough to provide cover for an ambush, but bright enough that prey is starting to move and become detectable. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, including the Hadza of Tanzania, studied extensively by UCLA sleep researcher Jerome Siegel, have documented that pre-dawn hours show a measurable spike in vigilance behavior, people stirring, shifting position, becoming lightly alert, well before actual sunrise. In other words, waking up slightly before the dangerous part of the day wasn't a coincidence. It was an advantage. The individuals who woke up groggy and disoriented exactly when the light changed were the ones who got caught off guard. The individuals whose bodies had already started raising cortisol, sharpening awareness, and preparing for action a little before dawn actually arrived. Those were the ones who noticed the rustle in the grass first. So when your body wakes you up 13 minutes before your alarm, it's not malfunctioning. It's running an ancient anticipatory alert system that was built for exactly one purpose. Don't let the dangerous part of the day catch you asleep. But wait, that explains waking up near dawn. It doesn't explain why your body can predict an arbitrary number like 647 that has nothing to do with sunrise. That's a fair question, and it's where this gets genuinely strange. Your body doesn't actually need to know the number 647. It needs something far more primitive, a sense of elapsed time. And it turns out, humans have an internal mechanism for tracking duration that operates almost completely outside conscious awareness, built on something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons sitting in your hypothalamus that functions as your body's master clock. This structure, first identified as the seat of circadian rhythm in studies in the 1970s, doesn't just track day and night. It tracks sleep stage progression, body temperature cycles, and hormone release timing in 90-minute waves throughout the night, called ultradian rhythms. Here's where it connects. If you go to bed at the same rough time repeatedly and wake at a similar time repeatedly, your suprachiasmatic nucleus starts anticipating that wake time, the same way it anticipates sunrise, by counting sleep cycles and adjusting hormone release accordingly. Set your alarm for a wildly different time than usual, and you'll often notice the anticipatory waking doesn't work nearly as well. Your body hasn't learned that number yet, but sleep at a fairly consistent time, even subconsciously, and within a few nights, your internal clock recalibrates to it, the same way it would recalibrate to a slightly earlier or later sunrise across seasons. This is also why the phenomenon gets stronger with routine and weaker with chaos. Shift workers, frequent flyers, and new parents, anyone whose sleep schedule is unpredictable, report this anticipatory waking far less reliably because the system that's supposed to predict the next dangerous window has nothing consistent to anchor itself to. Meanwhile, people with rigid routines, the same people who eat lunch at exactly noon without checking a clock, tend to report it constantly because their internal model of time has had consistent data to train on. Think about that for a second. Your nervous system has been quietly logging every wake-up time for weeks, building a predictive model and triggering a hormonal alert sequence in advance, all without your permission or awareness, using a process that almost certainly evolved to protect ancestors from predators who also kept a schedule. Now here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little. Light plays a role too, and it complicates the story in a way that makes the system even more impressive. Even with your eyes closed, even in a dark room, specialized photoreceptor cells in your retina, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, discovered relatively recently in research published in the early 2000s, are capable of detecting extremely faint changes in ambient light through closed eyelids. These cells don't contribute to vision at all. Their only job is feeding light information directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus to help fine-tune circadian timing. So if you sleep near a window, even heavy curtains, the first hints of pre-dawn light shift can subtly nudge your internal clock, layering on top of the learned schedule prediction and the cortisol anticipation system. 3 separate biological mechanisms: hormonal anticipation, internal time tracking, and residual light detection, all quietly cooperating to wake you up a few minutes before a number on a screen you set the night before. This is also, by the way, exactly why waking up before your alarm tends to feel different than waking up because of your alarm. When the alarm goes off and yanks you out of deep sleep mid-cycle, you experience something researchers call sleep inertia, a groggy, disoriented, almost hungover feeling that can last anywhere from a few minutes to over half an hour, documented extensively in work on sleep stage transitions. But waking naturally a few minutes early usually means your body has already cycled into a lighter sleep stage on its own schedule, timed by that same internal prediction system, which is why it tends to feel cleaner, calmer, almost deliberate. Your body isn't being interrupted, it's finishing on its own terms, slightly ahead of being told to. So if your ancestors' survival depended on waking up sharp before the dangerous part of the day, and your nervous system still runs that exact program every single morning, regardless of whether there's a single predator within 1,000 miles of your bedroom, what does that actually say about how much of your daily experience is still being run by software built for a world that hasn't existed in 10,000 years? It says quite a lot, honestly, because this isn't an isolated case. This predictive anticipatory system, the one quietly counting down towards your alarm, is the same general category of mechanism and behind why you start feeling hungry around the same time every day, even without a clock, why frequent travelers feel jet lag as a genuine physiological disorientation and not just tiredness, and why a consistent bedtime is one of the single most effective things you can do for sleep quality, more effective in many studies than total hours slept. Your body isn't keeping time the way a clock does, it's keeping time the way a hunter does, by pattern, by memory, and by the cost of being wrong. And that's really the uncomfortable twist hiding inside. A fact that seems almost cute on the surface. Waking up before your alarm feels like a fun little party trick your brain does. But the actual mechanism underneath it is a leftover survival algorithm, built across hundreds of thousands of years by ancestors for whom getting caught off guard at dawn could mean not waking up again at all. The part of you that hates being startled awake by a blaring sound isn't being dramatic. It's the same part of you that a very long time ago needed to already be alert before the light changed, because waiting for an external signal to tell you danger had arrived was sometimes 1 second too late. So the next time you wake up at 6:47 with your alarm set for 7, lying there mildly annoyed about the lost 13 minutes, remember what's actually happening underneath that. A network of hormones, a cluster of 20,000 ancient neurons, and a handful of light-sensing cells that don't even help you see, all working in perfect silent coordination to do exactly what they've always done. Get you alert before the dangerous part of the day arrives, except now the danger is a meeting at 9 and the predator is your own phone screen lighting up. If this messed with your head a little, hit that like button and subscribe for more. I've linked another video you'll want to watch right after this one.